take a moment to think about it, if someone were to ask you, what is Afro hair? How would you describe it to them? What are some of those things that come to mind? Think about what you're seeing when you're looking at the hair. Maybe how the hair looks, how the hair feels. If you ever worked with Afro hair, just think of words that come to mind that we could use to describe Afro hair when we're looking at it physically. So the first thing that might come to mind is that the hair has got a lot of volume. So that's one thing I hear a lot when I ask this question. So there's a lot of volume to Afro hair. Another thing that I hear is someone might say it's curly textured hair. Okay, so I'll put that here on there to see if we can use that as well to describe the hair. What else could we say about Afro hair? Something that come to mind could be the hair is quite dry. The hair can be quite coarse. Okay. The hair can also be very fragile, so it breaks very easily. Okay, so these are just some of the things that might come to mind when you're thinking about Afro hair. And then this might help you to then get to a point where you know how to describe this hair completely. But the simplest way to describe Afro hair is that Afro hair is, if I just write that here, so Afro hair is hair that is kinky, coiled hair texture. Okay, that's the simplest way to describe what Afro hair is if someone were to ask you to describe this hair. So forgive my handwriting, I don't have the best handwriting, but I hope you guys can still see it and read it clearly. So the best way to describe your Afro hair texture is just knowing that that hair is kinky coiled hair texture. I know sometimes when you look at the hair, it might look like the hair is curly. This is one of the key words that I always hear when I ask this question for anyone to describe to me what Afro hair is. The first thing they'll say is curly hair texture, but essentially Afro hair is not curly. If we look at the hair itself, you notice that it doesn't have any curls in there. They're very, very small, tight coils in the hair that you cannot see from afar off. But if you look at the hair closely, you're able to see the coils in the texture of the hair. So essentially, this is how you describe Afro hair. All these other stuff, yes, could be correct, because you can have Afro hair that's got a lot of volume. You can have Afro hair that is dry. You can have Afro hair that is coarse. This can also be due to just the natural curl pattern of the hair, or it can also be, the dryness can also be caused by someone not maintaining the hair very well or not using the right products to keep the hair moisturized. The hair is naturally fragile because of the curl pattern. So when we look at the structure of the hair at a later point, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, once we know what Afro hair texture is, we need to then work out what is multi-textured hair. So in the world of hairdressing, we use this term a lot to describe a specific hair group. Some of you might already be aware what multi-textured hair is. Some of you might have a little bit of an idea. Some of you might completely not have an idea, or you're not sure. But just give yourself a moment to think about what could be described as multi-textured hair. When I ask this question, the first thing I hear is someone would say to me, Michelle, is multi-textured hair that's got different textures in it? It's kind of correct way to answer that, but that's not the specific answer that I'm looking for. So some of the things that we can use to describe multi-textured hair would be curly. Okay, so the hair is curly. There's definitely volume. Okay, the hair can be dry. The hair can be fragile. Okay, what else could we use? The hair can feel coarse as well. Okay, and then we also have the element of the different textures in there. But the simplest way to understand what multi-textured hair is, if someone is mixed race, they have a combination of two types of hair groups. Okay, so for example, say someone is mixed race and mom is Caucasian and dad is black. So you have Caucasian hair, you have Afro hair. So that mixed together is essentially what creates multi-textured hair. It's the same thing, one parent could be Asian, the other parent could be black, and you have that mixture of the hair as well. So essentially, the fact that we've got two hair groups mixing, specifically two hair groups, this is what creates multi-textured hair. This is the professional term that we use to describe those hair textures, okay? So If someone is mixed race, their hair texture is covered in, specifically regarding the hair groups, it will be covered as multi-textured hair. Now, keeping in mind that if you look at anybody's head of hair right now, regardless of whether they've got Caucasian hair or Asian hair, there is some elements of different curl patterns on the head, but it doesn't mean that they've got multi-textured hair. We all have different varying degrees of curl patterns on the hair, where some of the parts of the hair could be quite loose, some could be tightly curled or tightly coiled. That all applies to every single person on the planet. But we're talking specifically about multi-textured hair. That is describing someone who's got two mix of different hair groups, specifically a mixture of Afro hair with either Caucasian or Asian hair texture. So that is the difference between Afro hair and multi-textured hair. So you probably would have heard the term that is used a lot now, textured hair. You might hear someone saying, I specialize in textured hair, or they might ask you, do you know how to do textured hair? So if you're already a stylist or you're in the world of hairdressing, you have an idea that they're asking you if you know how to do either Afro hair or multi-textured hair. For me personally, I feel that that term is not very specific enough, because you could ask someone, do you know how to do textured hair? They could say yes, but then you could be asking them specifically, do they know how to do Afro hair? They might not know how to do Afro hair, but they might have experience doing multi-textured hair. So I always feel that as hairstylists, sometimes we need to be a little bit more specific and separate the two groups from each other, because essentially the products that I use for styling Afro hair are going to be different to what I use for multi-textured hair. My styling techniques that I need to style Afro hair are likely going to be different to what I do with multi-textured hair. The fact that multi-textured hair is naturally curly, but there is varying degrees of curls, my focus when I style this hair, I'm focused on curl defining, what the person naturally has. When I'm working with Afro hair, it's kinky coiled hair texture. So that means I need to work out, am I going to be blow drying the hair to try and manipulate the hair in some way to create a curl or a wave in the hair? So this is when we look at the styling techniques. In a moment, we're going to discuss what options do we have when we actually need to style that hair. So as a hairstylist or someone starting out in the industry and you want to know more about these specific hair groups that we're focusing on, it's very important to know the difference between these two before you go ahead and actually start styling the hair. So if you're out there and you're planning, you have a job and you're traveling, say for example, you're a session stylist or someone who works in film and TV, in your kit, you need to take an account that you need to have products that are going to work for Afro hair and products that are going to work for multi-textured hair, because these two hair groups that are slightly different, they might have similarities to some extent, but the products that we use are going to be completely different, okay? So that's the first thing that we're covering, to just understand the terms and the definitions that we use to describe that hair. Another thing to note within these hair groups here, there are things that we do to change the structure of the hair, which I'll look at shortly and discuss that a little bit more, because again, there will be different terms that we then use to describe that hair. For example, you have hair that's chemically processed, you have hair that's texturized, you have hair that's curly permed, and then you have hair that's completely natural, that doesn't have any form of processing on the hair. So these are things that as a stylist, you'd be asking those kind of questions before you start styling someone's hair. You need to know, do they have Afro hair? Do they have multi-textured hair? Is their hair natural or is it chemically processed? Have they changed the structure of the hair in some way? So the next thing we're going to be looking at now is the hair and the curl structure of Afro and multi-textured hair.